Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the Real Collective podcast. I am Sean Tasse, your host, joined by my co-host Kyle Miller. And as we approach the 100th episode of the Real Collective podcast, just wanted to say thanks to everybody for taking the time to tune in, check us out, keep informed on real estate in Ottawa. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might be interested in this type of information. If you're watching us on Spotify, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you so much for watching on YouTube. Again, appreciate your eyeballs and the rest of your body. Kyle, how you feeling today, pal?
Oh, a little sick. A little sick. The vacation caught up with us, but other than that, good to go.
It's good. COVID on the plane.
Maybe. Nice recycle there.
Right.
Nice recycle there. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, it's you know what? Everybody's bound to just have to deal with it. I think if you get it over with and get back to life. So it's good.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
If it was pre 2019, it would have been like, I'll just go to the office and don't worry about it. And now I'm just like, well, I think we've learned that that's not the best course of action. So,
and you know what? Because of the last couple of years, everybody can probably work from home for the most part. So why not, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's been a decent adjustment to be like, I got to stay home because I'm sick. Doesn't mean I can't work. Just means I'm going to do it from home. Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I think that's been one of the better developments versus like losing a day of productivity and sick time and rah.
Right. So, I mean, sometimes it's not one day. Sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 days. Sometimes you lose a week, but you're not losing.
Oh, big time.
Right. And especially in our lines of work, you don't work, you don't get paid. Right.
Yeah. So this is not coming out of my vacation time.
Right. Yeah. Well, speedy recovery, pal. Hopefully you'll be all right in no time flat. So I wanted to take some time to talk about. There's been some stuff in the news specifically with regards to real estate in the States, and a couple some big Department of Justice cases being lobbied against real estate, organized real estate, and the National Association of Realtors, NAR. Essentially, there was this whole idea of anti-competitive, right? Because realtors, buying agents were being paid by the seller, it became anti-competitive. And one of the big things to come out of that was buyer agents telling their clients, hey, you can use me and I'm free, right?
Nice, smooth.
Right. And a lot of people here do the same thing, right? Where they say, hey, you can use my services and it doesn't cost you anything because my fee is rolled into the purchase price. It's rolled in, I'm paid by the seller, whatever the line is that the agent uses. And then by saying that, in the buyer's mind, it sort of becomes anti-competitive. Well, I can use anybody. It doesn't matter. Right? That's
it. Okay. Because but I thought that was it's a fairly true statement though, at least on this side of just like, hey, like the buyer ends up having to pay me, right? If I'm the buying agent.
Right.
So, are they free? Well, it's free to you, but it's not necessarily free for the transaction.
Right.
But then would they not protect themselves as the agent and even I guess as the buyer by signing like a buyer rep agreement?
Yeah. So, And so the idea being a lot of the agents were saying, hey, I'm free to use, right? You're not paying me anything directly. And I think what gets lost in translation is, well, no, I'm not free to use. I have a fee. My fee is rolled into your purchase price. And it's paid for by the seller. And normally the seller and the listing agent have that already determined what it is that I'm going to get paid. Right? That's the amount of cooperating with. And that's how it works here too. And that's what a lot of agents will say. Hey, I'm free to use. And the reality is, no, you're not free, right? Because there are different models that we have here that say, hey, we are going to pay you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer Agent, 1 penny.
Right.
And in that case, are you still free to use as the buyer agent, or are you hoping to get paid? Or will you take the 1 penny that you're getting paid?
So would a similar argument or case be, like I think in several years ago, I'd say, when I'll say it, like when Grapevine was there,
Yes.
and a buying agent may or may not, I'm not going to put that on anybody,
Sure. Yeah.
not take you to see a listing because that seller on Grapevine was not cooperating with a buying agent,
So there was a
or
big
the other way.
yeah, no, you got it. So that there was a big CBC showcase on that, where they call it what do they call it, like directing or coercing, or like uh aiming your client in a particular direction. As
Right.
an agent, you are legally not allowed to do that. Do some agents not follow the law? Unfortunately, yes. There are probably about 10% of agents who are doing illegal stuff on a regular basis. Sorry to say.
Right.
There's probably 50% of agents who are, unconsciously incompetent. Uh, and there's probably about 20% of agents who are, well, you see them, like the good ones, right? Who know what they're doing, who are doing their job on a regular basis. You're like, yeah, this is a good one. You got a good one. You're okay. Go ahead, right? And if we've got 3,500 agents in Ottawa, there's probably, maybe it's more than 20%. Maybe it's like 30%. 1,000 agents that are good, know what they're doing, put their clients' needs first, all that sort of stuff. And that's just sort of the way it crumbles. And it's probably the same in anything. But to get back to the point about the National Association of Realtors, there have been a few major not brokerages, but brands that have brokerages that are all independently owned and operated, that have said, you know what, then forget it. We don't need to be a part of the National Association of Realtors. We're out. We don't need your MLS system. We don't need this. We don't need this. And so the States is already super disbanded. Like in Canada, we're hoping to bring more people together and have one MLS system to serve all of Ontario, all of, each province. But in the States,
Do we
they've got,
not?
what's that? No,
Do we not?
we've got boards. We've got boards, and the boards each have the MLS. So there's a Toronto Real Estate Board, there's an Ottawa Real Estate Board, there's a
Yeah.
whatever, Barrie Real Estate Board. I don't know if that's true, whatever. But there's all these, like there's 17 real estate boards in Ontario, and they don't talk to each other. So I can't go on my back end MLS system and find out the particulars about a property in Toronto, which is why you say hire a local agent, right? Now
I
on
swear to God, I
realtor.ca,
didn't know this. I swear to God, I didn't know this.
there you go. On
Yeah, I didn't know that.
realtor.ca, everything, all the data is pulled from all the 17, let's say in Ontario, all the 17 different real estate boards. There's a Cornwall board, which is different than the Ottawa board. Okay. Right. So all of these different real estate boards push data to realtor.ca. And that's why realtor.ca is sometimes a day or two slower to upload the data from these real estate boards. The idea is, hey, if we can all be on the same board, the same real estate board, all the data is shared across everywhere. And that's what CREA is trying to do, the Canadian Real Estate Association. They're trying to streamline all the stuff they're putting out. So their stats that they're putting out are going to look the same in Toronto and in Ottawa. And, the board level, they were putting out their own stats. Anyways, all of this coming down to the idea of, maybe, hopefully in the future, the buyer will get the chance to choose what it is that they want to pay their buyer's agent, independent of what the sellers and the seller's agent have decided that they would like to pay to cooperate with. That is the end of it that might be coming down the pipe, because there are good agents and there are not as good agents. Right? You can represent yourself, right, and hope to save that money, or you can hire a professional and be represented. And yeah, okay, there's money that's going to be tacked on to your purchase price, to your mortgage. What effect is this going to have on house prices? What effect is it going to have on how everything's structured? So what's happening in the States, might not happen here, but it might, or we're different, right? Like our mortgage setup is different.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's the biggest thing. When you start tacking things onto the home value or the price, right? We just don't go for that here. Lots of times, I mean, you see that all the time with on any of the real estate shows. I always say I hate HGTV because it's ruined everything,
Yeah.
because it gives people this thought that, oh, if it's happening there, we can do it. Like, it's amazing how many people call me and think they're being sly, and they're like, here's what we're gonna do. Just gonna have them pay for it. We're gonna do this, and they're gonna get this discount. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, none of that can happen. Like, we are not that cool. Like, we can't do that, right? It's like, buy the house, you get the mortgage. Yeah, there's other details, but at the end of the day, like, that's it. There's none of this cash back incentive and paying for this and paying for that. No way. Like, even tell people to be wary. Like, when there's things like, I think there was a building here in Ottawa at one point where if you bought a condo, you got like a $10,000 lease on a Benz or something like that. This is, I don't know, 2015, 16, something like that. But that messed up a whole bunch of people, because that $10,000 was an incentive, and effectively was like the you were paying for it. Like, you're paying $10,000 more than you should have. So the
Right.
banks were like, no, we're just going to knock down that incentive. You didn't buy it for 250, you bought it for 240,
Yeah.
right? And now you got to come up with more down payment and all this kind of stuff. The incentives don't work here. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because if you start trying to tack stuff on, I don't see that working with our mortgage rules as they are today. That could
Right.
change,
Right.
probably not, but yeah.
Well, the only way it would change is if there's this big trickle down effect that happens, and like I say, they're set up a lot differently in the States than they are here. There's certainly some take home messaging that agents here in Canada need to change about how they operate, so that we don't wind up in the same position that they are down in the States, right? Like, that's for me, it's like, if you're working with a buyer, don't just go and tell a buyer, hey, you can hire me and it's free. Well, because it's not, right? There's other business models that exist. Like I said, you can represent yourself. You can show up and say, hey, I don't want any of that cooperating commission, right? And that's what's gonna change when TRESA comes in. So the Trust in Real Estate Services Act. Um, that will change representation. Right now, if you say, hey, I don't want representation, I want to go represent myself, the seller's agent who has charged their seller 5% to sell the house and agreed to cooperate at 2.5 will just say, okay, you, Mr. Seller, are paying me 5%, and there's no one who I have to pay the 2.5% to, so I get all 5. And that buyer, the person who thinks, oh, I'm going to represent myself, I'm going to go directly to the seller's agent, thinking, oh, hey, I'm going to save that 2.5%. Nope. The 2.5% just goes right back to the listing agent. So
Because you can't renegotiate that you've already signed your agreement.
that's right. So the agreement is
So
between
there have
the listing brokerage and the seller. That's done, right? Now you think you want to negotiate more money off the price? Who's the listing agent working for?
yeah.
Seller. And trying to sell for as much as they can, not random you walking in an open house thinking like, hey, I know how I'm going to do this. It doesn't work, right?
Well,
People, right?
that was the thing with Grapevine, right? Was the fact that you're like, hey, look, we're already knocking at least 2.5% off this, because you and me are just going to deal together, and
Yeah.
we're going to keep these other people out of it.
Yeah.
So we're already ahead of the game by 2.5% on several $100,000. We're both saving money here.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's it's
How
gonna be
how
interesting to see how that goes.
how do banks think about Grapevine deals when there's no agent involved?
Um,
What color is that
typically,
flag?
yeah. Well, typically what'll happen with something like that is they'll treat that more like a private deal.
Yeah.
So there's lots of times you'll see increased requests for appraisals, because they're like, how did you get this number? Right?
Right.
How did you get this number? And then it'll be, and potentially more asking for inspection reports. say like, well, who did the inspection? Like what clauses were in there? So they'll scrutinize them. They'll scrutinize them a little bit more. But you don't see them very often anymore. I haven't seen a for sale by owner in, I mean, well, I guess it'd be almost 3 years because like the pandemic, no one was doing that. I mean, they could have, but it was so wild.
Well, I mean, the problem is people would do it and they'd be like, "Hey, this is great. I listed for 550 and I sold for 560 and I did it myself. I didn't have to pay an agent." And then their neighbor next door sells the exact same house and they list it for 550 and they have an agent, they sell it for 600. And like, oh, well, wait a sec. Why am
Well,
I
it's
right?
and some of that came up too with what you're saying was I think some of the other stuff was where the Grapevine back end people station, right? Because like you're saying, hire a local agent who knows that market because it's not the same in Toronto as it is here. But a lot of those, anytime I run into it, the majority of those agents were that you're dealing with on the phone and talking to them were coming from Toronto. So they don't necessarily know how to help guide on this in your area. So
Yeah.
that was the other thing is people were trying to get a hold of them, and then yeah, it was never
They
super
didn't, they
smooth.
didn't they didn't work after 8 p.m. or whatever it is. I mean, listen, there's been a couple of them in my career that I've seen that have opened and that have closed. I mean, the business model doesn't work, and the reason it doesn't work is because you can't run a business where you don't make any money. Otherwise, you don't last long and you go out of business, and then another one will pop up, right? And so it's just it's circular. Anyways, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back after. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with anybody who you'd like to. If you'd like to schedule an appointment with Kyle or I, you can do so in the Calendly links below. Thank you for listening on Apple Podcast and on Spotify. We'll see you after we come back.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the second half of the Real Collective podcast episode. I think we're at 98, if you can believe it. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, download this, share this with someone you like, do all of the things. Schedule an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly link below. And we're just going to jump right back into talking about what we were talking about, which is different business models and what all of this means for the future of real estate. So taking a look at the crystal ball, there are new and different models that service clients in different ways, and you brought up one just off camera a second ago here.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it always seems so simple, and I like the marketing aspect of it. But the thought was always like, hey, you real estate agents, the market says you kind of give up 5% as a seller, and the two agents split it, and that's that. So when it comes to a place like, I'll say it, like Unreserved, for example, so they're doing 0.5%, but that would mean that's what, if you're the seller, that they're asking for 0.5, or you're agreeing to 0.5% for them. But there's another agent coming in that at that point has no money. So how does that negotiation happen? Because like I said, it was always just kind of like 5% and 2.5, and let's go. But
Yeah,
it seems to be not that.
and absolutely, I think it's a really neat and interesting business model that they have. I like the idea of people who are pushing organized real estate to do better, and I think they showed up on the scene as hey, we're not going to be a part of organized real estate, we're going to do our own thing over here, and it's going to be based on an auction model, right? Which, hey, during COVID, as the prices were going nuts, yeah, cool, that was a really neat thing that they were doing. And now they've sort of settled into more of a brokerage role, and the service offering, their idea is that the service offering is going to be a lower fee to the client. What I think I would prefer to see if I was a consumer is sort of a menu of service offerings, as opposed to, and this is the same thing you just said, right? It's like, hey, agent walks in, yeah, it's 5%. I keep 2.5%, I pay 2.5%. It's not,
because that's all I thought it always was.
Right.
And then, like you said, like if there was ever something that we were arguing about, there's a few thousand here or there. All they tell people all the time, don't lose a house over $5,000. But is that you as the selling agent most likely would have to take the haircut,
Yeah.
right, and drop your service fee, right? Or at least there's a little bit of negotiation between the selling agent and the buying agent. Say, look, let's both take a little bit, make this deal work, and everybody moves on.
Yeah.
Right.
And and sometimes that's what happens. I like the idea of this idea. We talked about it yesterday. I had a really cool training session where the consumer gets to choose, hey, here's how much I would like to pay you, Mr. or Mrs. listing agent. You have this package, and it's, I mean, in the case of the one you just brought up, it's 0.5%. But you know what? I want more than what it is you're offering. And of course, what they're saying is, hey, we're offering the sun and the moon all at 0.5%. How can a business model like that survive? They've got, from what I understand, they've got like not grant money, but like private investors or whatever. I don't know. Certainly not going to slander, not what I'm about, but how can that last if you're only charging that amount? Maybe there's something I'm missing. I'm happy to hear in the comments, oh, well, here's how that business model is going to last. RE/MAX has been around for 50 years, right? They know what they're doing. They were the original industry disruptors, right? Back in the 70s or 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
Speaking of back in the 70s or 80s, I am watching Winning Time, the second season with Magic Johnson, and talking about the LA Lakers. What a great show. There's my thing. Anyways, getting back into it. I would love to see listing agents offering different levels of service to the consumer, where they say, hey, look, if you want to pay me 1.5% or 0.5, whatever the number is, you want to pay me 2%, here's what it is that you get for that. If you want to pay me 3.5%, here's what it is you get for that. And there's a different offering. So like, give consumers an opportunity to choose. Here's how I want to be served. Here's the level of service that I'd like to receive from you, right? I think that'd be great. And then as the seller, again, the way that stuff is built out right now, it's up to the seller and their agent to determine how they want to cooperate with the other side. Down the road, it should be the case that the buyer's agent has the same conversation with their buyer client and says, hey, how do you want to be served as a buyer client? Do you want me to, you live 3 hours away, you want me to virtually go to every house for you, record a video, tell you why you shouldn't buy it, and then finally find the right place, and then you buy it and you do the whole thing remotely? There's more to it, there's more involved. So maybe that's a 3% package instead of the 2 or the 2.5, and that buyer client pays the difference directly, whether they pay it by adding it to the mortgage, adding it to the contract, adding it to the statement of adjustments, whatever. The banks, I think, are one of the reasons why we're stuck in the way that we are, but it's stopping us from agents as being able to give the consumer what they want, which is choice. Right?
It's an interesting point. It's an interesting point in that direction of just of what banks are willing to finance. Right. And what they're willing to add. Because I get it that what they don't want to do is at the end of the day, they're worried about value. They're worried about the shirts on their back, right? And you don't want to finance 105% of a property, right? Even though when you do the math, your CMHC fee gets you back to like 93% financed at the end of the day, but that's a different story. So it's interesting that they would do that. And I guess they've done it before. We had 100% financing. So I think that's one of the biggest disconnects we have is those two parts of the same industry that don't work together. Like, as much as we work together, our governing bodies don't. Like,
Yeah.
our governing bodies don't. We don't talk about how changing things in the real estate industry from a consumer standpoint could actually benefits the consumer, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And the banks just be like, oh, that's too bad, we won't do that. Right? Like, now all of a sudden they're the ones blocking how much choice a consumer could have, because they won't allow for, a little bit of borrowed funds to be buried into the mortgage, or for the bank to kick in the $1,000 or $2,000 extra, which really makes no difference in the end,
But the thing is,
to cover off something like commissions or that agreement. If I'm making sense.
yeah, no, I get it. But the thing is, it's already happening, right? It's the 5% that's going to pay the agents. It has artificially increased the price of the houses, because you could make the argument that, well, the actual real value of the house is only 95% of what the final sale price was, because 6%, because 5% plus HST is coming right off the top, right? So let's say you sell your house for 800,000. Well, really all you're getting as the seller is whatever it is, 700 and whatever the math is, 750,000 or something like that, right? So is that the real value of the house? Is the house really only worth 750 instead of the 800 that it's reported on MLS as sold?
And is that not part of the argument right now that's going on, or the class action lawsuit that's going on in Toronto against TREB? So
the same thing that I'm talking about with the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and the Department of Justice in the States, has now trickled into exactly what you're talking about, what's happening at TREB. It's this idea of, it isn't fair. This is, non-competitive, and real estate agents are running the show, and we as consumers don't have options. That's what it comes down to, right? The consumers want to be able to choose, yeah, here's what I want to do, here's how I want to operate, here's what it is. And I mean, if the banks are a dinosaur industry, we're like, nope, this is what we do, this is how we operate, so are we. Let's look around. What's the average age of agents, right? 65, 66 years old. Like, nobody, they're not changing anything, right? So
yeah, go ahead.
No, let's go.
I see it's I might have lost my train of thought here, so I might have to cut this.
There's no
I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, like, it ultimately just comes down to, there's a better way to do what we've always been doing, and there needs to be some harmony between everybody.
Now I remember.
Go.
But now I remember. But I think the one thing too is that one of the changes then would also potentially be how to protect, this might sound odd, but how to protect the service provider, being the realtors, right? Because I mean, I'll use our industry for an example.
That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody cares about. Hey, how do you protect these real estate agents that are making, count hundreds of billions of dollars? Have you never watched Selling Sunset?
Yeah.
They don't need anything.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, but even just from the but it is true to an example. I mean, I think real estate agents might get that bad rap. But I'll use us as an example in the mortgage world. I'm not allowed to charge any type of retainer. Right. Really. I mean, I know there's agents that do, and they'll put out they'll have you sign some type of form that's like, hey, I'm committing to work with you for X amount of time or whatever, because we put in time and effort, and there's efficiencies and different business models that we have to worry about on our side, that if we do all this work and you don't complete a deal with us because you just up and walked over to CIBC, for example, at the last minute, and they drop their pants for you for whatever reason, right? We've expended all these resources and have nothing to show for it. But I can't do anything about it. I can't go after you for anything. Right. And even those forms, quite honestly, spoiler alert, whoever's seeing this and may hate this, they're not enforceable. Like, I don't know them to be enforceable. So it's more of it's you're really looking for that commitment. And what I'd be afraid to see happen is in those last moments, right? You're in a negotiation, or you've got your conditional period, and the guy who's pinching two pennies together tighter than anything is like, I can go somewhere else and get someone else to finish this paperwork for cheaper. Like that drives me nuts. There's just no respect there for that. And that's where I think that pendulum would swing too much for a little bit. So I wonder what the balance, it's still what you said, it's harmony, it's striking the balance to make sure that clients have choice, but if the service provider is still protected to a degree that they're going to get paid for the work they do.
Sure.
Right.
Here's the thing is, sure, yeah, that's good. I always look at it as, yeah, okay, you know what? You can go to someone else. Someone else is going to be cheaper. I mean, they should be. They're cheaper because they have to be, because they don't offer anything else, really, right? The level of protection that I'm certain that I'm able to offer my clients, not just right now at the beginning of it, but like, as you're saying, going from that contract to the close and leading and even post close, the level of service that I'm able to provide is more than the amount of money that you're going to save by the guy in the back corner. I can save you an extra 0.5%. Like I'm certain that I'll protect my client's interest more than that extra half point, whatever,
And which I get. But I think we can agree. There's people out there. Everybody's smarter than me.
Yes.
Everybody's smarter than me.
Yeah. And somebody's going to go there.
So 100%. 100% they're going to go there. And when enough of them do it, it becomes very, very difficult. Right.
Yeah.
So
stuff starts to blow up.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But that would be interesting to see that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like the future of real estate. So there you go. You heard it here first, folks, on the Real Collective Podcast.
Episode 98. Future real estate. There it is.
All right. Well, listen, as always, guys, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, download this, share it with somebody who you think might be interested in this type of information and this speculative, mechanics of how all of this will work. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much. If you'd like to book your own private consultation with Kyle or myself, you can do so in the Calendly links below. And until next time, keep it real.
Collective.